Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
ShareAction's a registered charity, and most of our work is actually about trying to get the very big shareholders, pension funds who look after your retirement savings, to be active, engaged stewards. And actually, this morning, before I came here, very encouragingly, I got an email from the chair of one of the UK's largest pension schemes, who'd recently met with a group of members pushing that scheme down this track, and she's agreed to go to the annual general meeting of a FTSE 100 company on behalf of the 150,000 members in that scheme and ask a question on an issue. But the nice thing about annual general meetings is that we can all go, and doing so is a remarkably effective way of getting an issue taken seriously by the absolutely top decision makers in some of the world's very largest companies. But the purpose of going is to make sure that the boards are held accountable on issues where their companies are having hugely important impacts on the world, on society, on the environment. And unless they hear from us, very often, they, sheltered beings as they are, the directors of some of these global companies, they don't hear from anyone directly during a year about these issues. And I just wanted to reflect on the kind of democratic design of companies. There is this institution, it's a legal requirement for an annual meeting where you can get face-to-face with the directors. If you think of other powerful institutions in our world, it's actually very hard to get face-to-face with the directors of the IMF or the cabinet ministers in our government. And the AGM, I think, is a bit of a dying institution. They used to be really lively with lots of angry shareholders, and they've become neglected because big institutional investors don't often go. So that's another reason they're a terrific opportunity. Now let me tell you, in the few minutes remaining, a few quick stories. AstraZeneca is a company that was, until very recently, a funder of a very controversial lobbying organisation called ALEC. That's in the States, busy drafting states' laws against gun control. And the directors of AstraZeneca honestly had no idea that they were funding this organisation. Post an AGM question, they've dropped their funding of that organisation, no longer doing it. We have been all over annual general meeting season asking the boards of directors to think about the people at the very bottom of their companies and the people that do the cleaning and catering and those other services that make the companies tick and don't get a living wage. And I went a couple of years ago to Barclays AGM when Bob Diamond was still at the helm of the company. Very underpaid gentleman, as you all know. But hadn't given an awful lot of thought to this topic and was really quite taken aback and committed there and then in front of a very large room of shareholders to take it forward. The result was 3,000 people got a pay rise. Of course, an AGM question needs a context of a wider campaign or a wider movement or a wider set of stakeholders raising an issue with a company. It's not a sort of one-trick result, outcome sort of situation, but it is a valuable nudge. The whole question of board diversity. Schroders is one of the major investors of all of our pension assets, and we want them asking companies about board diversity because it's important to board performance. But they've only got one woman on the board of the company, and almost everybody on the board went to the same school. So there's a real issue to be raised, and we raised it. And very often what's happened is we've had feedback informally from people inside the company saying, thank you for bringing that up. You know, we've been trying to raise this issue internally for ages. And our questions can be a fantastic prompt and help move those debates forward in a progressive direction. So how do you do it? Well, we at ShareAction can help you with the paperwork. We're setting up a dating agency of people that have shares and never go to the meetings and are very pleased to provide their proxy to someone that would like to go. So the logistics around that is something we can help with. Do your homework. You need to really know your issue well. You need to have thought about and looked up who's on the board of the company, a bit about what's been going on in the news with that company. Just obviously the basic homework does really make a question much more effective. Be succinct, be polite, and then do the networking afterwards. Once the formal business is over, there's often tremendous opportunity to access the board of directors and give them your business card or take theirs and set up a bit of a personal exchange afterwards. And then follow up with correspondence. So all of those things are what make an AGM intervention really effective. And yeah, I hope people will feel that it's something they'd like to do.
Islington Council's top priority is to tackle poverty and reduce inequality, starting in, but I think importantly not ending in, our 6 small square miles of London. So when we came to power in 2010, we ran a big listing exercise which was called a Fairness Commission. It was the first of its kind at the time. There's now 15 or so around the country, to ask Islington residents, our neighbours, what they thought we should do to close the gaps that threaten to divide our borough. And the top reply that came back was to tackle working poverty by trying to do something in particular about poverty pay. So we committed to push the living wage campaign as far as we could, believing that no one should have to do a hard day's work for less than they can live on, and knowing the difference that a living wage can make, knowing that it can mean quitting that second job, getting to spend some time with your children, going on a holiday for the first time in ages, buying a Christmas present, being able to catch the tube rather than the bus. So since then, we've become the first accredited living wage local authority in the country. Part of the way we did that was to chop £50,000 off our chief executive's salary and spend it on bringing our cleaners' salaries up to the living wage. We've secured the living wage for 100% of our own staff, and now for 98% of our contractors. So the only people doing work for Islington Council now who don't get paid a living wage are the people working in adult residential care, which is a shame because that's some of the most important work in our society, but it's proving very difficult as a nut to crack. We wanted to make Islington a place in the country where everybody, whoever they work for, got a decent wage. And so we've been lobbying and cajoling and convincing and persuading other employers in Islington to pay a living wage as well. And as a result, I think we're the part of the country now with the second highest concentration of living wage employers. But we want to reach out even further, using every lever that we can to tackle poverty and inequality, as I said. And that includes for us our £900 million Islington Pension Fund, which we've not really used before to this end. But it strikes us that it's entirely in keeping with our fiduciary responsibility as a pension fund to engage the companies